Now, speaking of our war crimes, this is a very important day in the history of the United States of America, but one that is probably lost in a sea of war crimes that we have engaged in over the course of the many, many years that we've been around. This is the 20-year anniversary of our shock and awe campaign. That is, how wonderful that we were just talking about how, like, that chatter saying, seems like Americans are a little bit, or seems like Russians are like just like Americans, but like maybe a little bit worse. Well, maybe you can make an assessment for yourself. It's going to be really hard for you to perhaps see the victims of America's war crimes in this regard as full human beings because they aren't, white. But just imagine in your mind, for the sake of this argument, that they're like Ukrainian children that America's doing this to, and maybe maybe you'll develop like a different perspective on the matter.
Forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
We welcome you back to CBS Mornings with the moment that President George W. Bush announced the U.S. had invaded Iraq back in 2003, nearly 20 years ago today. The justification at the time that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Those weapons, of course, famously and consequentially were never found. And while Iraqi
Wow. CBS still running fucking defense for the American State Department is the best thing. I mean, this is the greatest example of that. Brother, everybody knows you lied on purpose. Why the fuck are you still defending them like there was ever a real weapon of mass destruction? At the time, the United Nations' own investigative teams openly stated that there were no weapons of mass destruction found in any Iraqi facility whatsoever. America, like, very openly lied about it. It's probably one of the most visible, most obvious, glaringly obvious fucking lies that the U.S. government has ever told at the international scale. There have been endless amounts of evidence for everybody knowing that it was a fucking lie, and yet for some reason, you listen to CBS Morning 20 years later, and they're like, oh, they were looking for it, but they were never found. Just fucking say it was a lie, you fucking asshole. Everybody knows.
Operation Iraqi Freedom led to the fall of Saddam's brutal regime. It also cost the lives of around 4,500 American service members and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. Charlie Daggett covered the conflict from the very beginning. We dug up the footage to prove it. There he is, 20 years ago. He's now back in Baghdad for this grim anniversary. Charlie, what a consequential moment in 21st century history. Good morning.
Good morning to you from Baghdad, a very different Baghdad than 20 years ago. When I first came here, people were still living in fear under Saddam Hussein. Then the invasion, the fighting, the rise and fall of...
I can't watch this. I can't. This is disgusting. Oh my God. Bro, I'm getting whiplash from watching Russia try to do like half as effective as like a military campaign as what America did in Iraq. Like, we watch Russian propaganda on this network all the time, right? On this channel all the time. We laugh about it because it's laughably bad. Okay? Meanwhile, this motherfucking piece of shit, this $400 haircut, okay, with no soul, this ghoul, this demon, is over here being like, yeah, people were so scared. Faustini, something we can agree on. Shock and awe was a disgusting war crime and nothing close to Russians bombing Kyiv. There you go. Even Faustini fucking agrees, okay? And it doesn't compare. Like, it literally doesn't compare. You can be the greatest NatSec ass sucker, okay? But you cannot fucking turn around and literally refuse to recognize how devastating this shit was. Millions, okay? We murdered millions of Iraqi civilians. Millions. Holy fuck. Millions before with sanctions, and then millions after with direct bombing campaigns and a boots on the ground military invasion. We used depleted uranium munitions. We used white phosphorus. Just the absolute fucking, just the absolute worst shit you can imagine. Al Jazeera has much better coverage over this, but I'm like scared there's going to be TOS in this probably. Al Jazeera just like fucking lets it rip. I've heard people on the right even say the government lied about weapons of mass destruction. Yes. 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 This is like, well, it's already a fact. It's a very well-established fact. Which is why I'm surprised that, like, these fucking dipshits are even... I mean, I guess I'm not surprised. They're just polishing it, you know?
ISIS. The violence has now subsided, but it's taken a horrific toll. 20 years since shock and awe. 20 years since that night, airstrikes and cruise missiles lit up the skies over Baghdad, paving the way for U.S. ground troops to converge on the capital. In the first few weeks of the war, a group of Iraqi civilians had gathered here and began attacking the statue of Saddam Hussein. It was an event that was shown live on TV screens around the globe. A U.S. Marine unit collared the statue, yanking it until it...
Bro, I'm fucking... This is so disgusting. For the liberals in the chat, this is literally the... It's so funny that Putin is in Mariupol right now. Like, or Putin went to Mariupol. Because, like, this is the same exact shit. Oh, look how they're welcoming me in Mariupol. And the difference is, there are at least some, this is not justifiable, but there are at least some fucking people who are like, no, I am actually pro-Russia. There's no one in Iraq that's like, I feel American, okay? Because America is thousands of fucking miles away from Iraq. No one is like, oh yeah, we speak the same language. Thank God the American liberators are here. And if the Putin invasion of Russia, or fucking keep saying that, the Putin invasion of Ukraine is unjustifiable, which it is not justifiable, then the American invasion of Iraq is definitely not justifiable. Okay?
Toppled to the ground. The crowd beat it with sticks and shoes, dragging its decapitated head through the streets. It came to symbolize the collapse of the Saddam regime. In reality, the Battle of Iraq had only just begun. Saddam's removal sparked a ferocious insurgency and a bloody and prolonged sectarian conflict.
We've been through a lot. We saw some things no one should see. We lived days no one should live.
Ahmed al-Jabouri was 13 years old when the country was invaded. His wife, Muja, was 9.
What was it like here?
We were looking for something better.
Bro, this is so nasty. God. Oh, every part of this is so fucking gross, dude. This is really, 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 really fucking gross shit, dude. I don't... Oh my God, this is disgusting. Absolutely the worst level of fucking retconning. Just so scummy. So indecent. You are such a monster for cutting this fucking propaganda, you piece of shit, you fucking dog, coward, bitch, motherfucker. This fucking asshole. Oh, it makes my blood boil. Guys, please explain like I'm 5. There is no explanation. They're doing every single thing that they always do whenever America invades a fucking country or has any kind of interest in a fucking country. They unjustifiably invaded Iraq. They knew that it was fucking bullshit. They lied to the entire international community. They went and they bombed the fuck out of Baghdad. They bombed so many parts of Iraq. Okay? They literally destroyed the lives of millions of Iraqi civilians. Okay? They used depleted uranium. They used white phosphorus, all of which are literal war crimes. And not only that, but 20 years later, they turned around, openly recognized that it was bullshit. Bush even had the audacity to fucking say, oh man, unjustifiable invasion of Iraq. I mean, Ukraine. Well, Iraq too. Like literally last year, and everybody laughed about it. Highway of Death was not this iteration. For those of you who don't know, Highway of Death was Bush Sr. That's how much we fucked with Iraq, okay? Highway of Death is not even this Bush that did what you're referencing. That's the old Bush. That's Daddy Bush that did Highway of Death. That's not even considered as like a war crime, even though that is precisely a fucking war crime. That was a war crime so gross and so obvious on retreating forces where there were men, women, and children, okay, pregnant women and shit, that we unloaded into, okay? The depleted uranium and its impact is still noticeable in Iraq because it has a higher rate of birth defects in Iraq to this day, 20 years later, than Vietnam. Another country that we absolutely had no business being inside of, that we fucking destroyed. So to look at that, this false pretense that this war was justifiable, and having the indecency to make it seem like it was an Operation Iraqi Liberation, Operation Iraqi Democracy, Iraqi Freedom, 20 years after the fact, when everybody fucking understands universally that this was completely unacceptable, okay? The fact that you are still running defense for something that George W. Bush himself personally recognized was bullshit, it makes my blood boil. It is so gross. It's so vile. Fuck all of these animals, okay? Every single one of these media demons deserves the absolute worst punishments. I cannot in good conscience sit here and act like these people are not violent, barbarian animals that justified and defended through one of the most popular forms of fucking media the complete evisceration of the lives of millions of Iraqi people. And that is being like very conservative when I describe this. This is before we get to Abu Ghraib. This is before we get to like wanton punishments, cruel, unusual punishments that no one should have ever been subjected to. This is before we talk about the torture. And I don't even mean the torture that they defended that the CIA did at black sites that they considered a form of enhanced interrogation that was proven to be ineffective regardless, but it doesn't matter because cruelty was the purpose. I'm talking straight up torture that the U.S. military engaged in. There is nothing. These men, and there are a lot of veterans in here that also participated in this, who are fucking tormented by that experience every single day of their lives. But what these people did, what we did at the behest of the military-industrial complex in Iraq, at the behest of like securing natural resources like we always do. What we did back then is akin to Nazi shit, okay? If you want to understand it that way, you can understand it that way, I hope. Never forget that in the immediate invasion of Iraq, the only fucking ministry that was secured was the Ministry of Energy. Every other ministry was absolutely eviscerated, burned to the fucking ground, pillaged. The only ministry that was secured was the Ministry of Energy. I wonder why.
One day, like, it's very affected me that I opened the door waiting for my friend to come to go to school, and I found two kids, like maybe 4 or 5 years old, like in front of our house.
The bodies of two children.
The bodies of two children.
Muja experienced similar horror. My mom was taking me to school. She said, "We saw dogs eating the dead bodies. I will never forget that in my life." Kidnappings and bombings became a daily occurrence.
So I still remember the shouting and the...
Like, look at the way that they're using neutrality here when they're covering it. Like, they're making it seem like Iraqi people were being fucked over by other people in Iraq. That volatility in Iraq was directly caused by the United States of motherfucking America. The kidnappings were conducted by the American military. Let's be fucking real, okay? When they weren't directly doing that, when they weren't directly doing the kidnapping or murdering fucking teachers or murdering fucking babies, okay? Their instability is what created a power vacuum that created ISIS, which we played a role in, by the way.
Screaming and the fire and the smoke everywhere.
Today, the city may feel more secure, but the couple does not.
I'm waiting for the next thing to happen.
Really?
Really. Every day you wake up in the morning and you expect the worst. Every single day.
Yet, they're determined to stay here. They're expecting their first baby in September. In today's Baghdad, the marketplaces are bustling. Most of the concrete blast walls and barbed wire are gone. Iraqis tell us they're determined to put the country's troubled, bloody history behind them. We spoke with U.S. Ambassador to Iraq, Alina Romanowski, who's on a visit to Washington, D.C.
There's still much more that all of us could be doing, but I think we're on a cautiously optimistic path.
What's like literal fucking demons, dude? Blood-sucking demons. Straight up.
Working now that hasn't been working in the past?
Well, I think there are a number of things that are working now. First of all, I think you have a government that is committed to
Thank you, not your average African, for the timestamps.
To, improving the lives and the services for Iraqi people. We're
going to cover Al Jazeera. Hold on.
It is a government that is very clearly interested in building a future for Iraq.
After so much bloodshed and chaos, it may take years to build that future for Iraq. But 2 decades after the invasion that upended this country, there is finally hope that they can.
I hope CBS Morning does some news like this in Libya Street on the slave markets too. U.S. intervention good? Yeah. Now, I'm going to finish this gross depiction of jerking off the American, the violent, bloodthirsty American military machine, and then we'll cover a little bit more of a real perspective on Iraq 20 years later.
Now, there are some serious challenges ahead. Iran's influence continues to be a problem, and 2,500 U.S. troops still remain here. Top U.S. general here told us the primary role is to ensure that ISIS doesn't reform and launch another attack on the country. Vlad?
Charlie D'Agata with monumental reporting then and now. Charlie, thank you very much. As Charlie points out, there's so many seminal moments from that time. First beginning with Colin Powell appearing before the UN.
Like, I think I would lock these motherfuckers in a cage. Like, I'll just straight up say it, okay? I think these guys are doing jailable shit too, okay? Straight up. Like, the moment that you look at Iraq 20 years later, when everyone objectively understands that it is, like, completely unimaginably cruel, and you try to make it seem like it's, like, reasonable, acceptable, you take, like, a wishy-washy stance on it, I would throw you in jail. Straight up. If I had any kind of power, this is the world. If there was any justice in this world, you would literally jail every fucking piece of shit that is in the media that played an active role in justifying the war, which we're going to get to, by the way. Remember, everyone's got their choice bits of vintage Iraq commentary. This one's still mine. Not sure if anything tops it. This fucking demon still writes for the New York Times. This fucking demon still writes for the New York Times. This was in May 2003. Please watch Thomas Friedman go and advocate for some of the most insane shit.
That basically built up over the 1990s said, flying airplanes into the World Trade Center, that's okay. Wrapping yourself with dynamite and blowing up Israelis in a pizza parlor, that's okay. Because we're weak and they're strong and the weak have a different morality. Having your preachers say that's okay, that's okay. Having your charities raise money for people who do these kinds of things, that's okay. And having your press call people who do these kind of things martyrs, that's okay. And that built up as a bubble, Charlie. And 9/11 to me was the peak of that bubble. And what we learned on 9/11 in a gut way was that that bubble was a fundamental threat to our open society. Because there is no wall high enough, no INSA.
This piece of shit writes for the New York Times. Still understand that these demons were never punished. You will never get punished for defending the American military apparatus. You will only get elevated to higher and higher positions in the media. This is why so many people inherently mistrust the mainstream media, okay? I cover it all the time. I have a lot of journalist friends. I talk about the media biases all the fucking time, but never forget that when it comes to America's foreign policy and America's allies and America's declared nation-state enemies, they will always toe the bottom line of the State Department. They will always defend capital. Always. Never forget that.
Agent smart enough, no metal detector efficient enough to protect an open society from people motivated by that bubble. And what we needed to do was go over to that part of the world, I'm afraid, and burst that bubble. We needed to go over there, basically, and take out a very big stick, right in the heart of that world.
Show you a fucking very big stick, you goddamn animal.
And burst that bubble. And there was only one way to do it. Because part of that bubble said, we've got you. This bubble is actually going to level the balance of power between us and you because we don't care about life. We're ready to sacrifice, and all you care about are your stock options and your Hummers. And what they needed to see was American boys and girls going house to house from Basra to Baghdad and basically saying, which part of this sentence don't you understand? You don't think, we care about our open...
Yeah, that's what like 14-year-old girls needed to understand. That like some fucking juiced up freak Marine breaking their fucking door and coming in and terrifying them and maybe even killing their family members. Like they needed to know that. Why? For the crime of being born in fucking Fallujah. For the crime of being born in Baghdad. For the crime of being born in a nation that America wanted their juicy fucking natural supplies. Okay? That's it. Yeah. Saddam was an awful demon in many respects. And yet America was so fucked that they made Saddam look good. Which, by the way, they also made Saddam in general, but that's a different point. That's, we're talking, older American lore at that point. Like, objectively speaking, despite the fact that Saddam Hussein was a fucking demon, okay? In many respects, Iraq was objectively in a better place when he was manning the fucking helm before the American invasion. That's how crazy America is. Friedman's sociopathy is honestly appreciated. Sociopathic honesty is appreciated. The Iraq War was about picking a vulnerable Muslim nation, one that we'd already decimated with bombs and sanctions to exert American might upon. Every lie about the WMDs in service of that impulse. It was a show of force. Anyway, I can't literally finish one fucking clip without like getting insanely triggered.
In society, you think this bubble...
Bruh, not true. He gassed the Kurds. Happy Nowruz to my Kurds. Oh my God, dude. I know. That's why I said he was a fucking demon. Okay, shut up.
Fantasy, we're just going to let it grow. Well, suck on this. Okay? And basically saying, which part of this sentence don't you understand? You don't think, we care about our open society? You think this bubble fantasy, we're just going to let it grow? Well, suck on this.
I love when like effete libs just show their might in the exact same way that Ben Shapiro does by basically just fucking talking about how the American military machine literally bullying and eviscerating a fucking much poorer nation whose dictatorship we basically solidified, whose chemical weapons we gave him to use on the Kurdish population, like that fucking chatter was talking about. Okay, mustard gas and the like. Like Thomas Friedman gets to feel like a big man when America's doing genocidal war crimes in Iraq. You know what I mean? Like a big man. He's like, yeah, suck on this. Fucking violent demon. You vulturous monster. You fucking venomous whore. I hate these fucking demons. I hate them so much. I cannot say exactly what I want to happen to them. It would be a severe, almost gross, but justifiable terms of service violation. I will not be saying it, but I'm thinking it, and you can't stop me from thinking it. You can't. Every single one of these fucking pieces of shit are, pretty much most of them, are alive and well and already running around and have already moved on from the Iraq shit or being censored, bro. What do you mean? Huh.
Okay. That, Charlie, was what this war was about. We could have hit Saudi Arabia. It was part of that bubble. Could have hit Pakistan. We hit Iraq because we could. That's the real truth. And the message...
An animal.
People who do these kinds of... The terrorism bubble that basically built up over the 1990s said, flying airplanes into the World Trade Center.
This was May 2003. Clip doesn't quite capture it, but they're talking about Iraq in a past tense. The question Friedman is answering is, now that the war is over and there's some difficulty with the peace, was it worth doing? This is the thread that we're going to be looking at now. Thomas Friedman in 2002 May, noting how the U.S. is lucky because we only occasionally get one-off freaks like Timothy McVeigh because Americans are just so naturally trusting of each other. Now, that's what I'd call a failure to imagine. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, look at where we're at now. For those of you too young to have lived through what happened 20 years ago, and I was certainly not only not too young, but I remember it vividly as someone who would visit the United States of America, okay, frequently, This is something I'm very familiar with. This is in the pocket. Okay, we're talking. You know, I saw this. I saw this happen. I watched it from afar. I watched it from Turkey, and I certainly saw it happen in America as well. Whenever I visited, it's very difficult for me to talk about without getting like incredibly, just without violating the terms of service. Ironic because like, if there was a just world, like what they're claiming, what they find to be totally just and normal, which is the real bloodshed, okay? You're tough Hassan from your war-torn Turkey. I never said that. That's why I said I watched it from afar and not from the United States of America. Also, you literally live in bumfuck Iowa. Shut the fuck up. Like, you literally not only play a role in this war machine, okay? You championed it, and your stupid inbred hick honky fucking parents also championed it, okay? So shut the fuck up, you pig fuck. You dumb Angloid idiot. Your dumb inbred cousin fucking parents loved the fucking military, loved the endless fucking military conquest. It made you feel like a big boy when they were doing it. It made you feel like some fucking sheep herder in Iraq was actually a threat to your freedom of speech when the American government already has taken everything away from you, and you deserve the serfdom that you live in, okay? And you will never have a good life. You're tough Hassan from your war-torn Turkey. I'm talking about the story, your story you told. I'm talking about your New Jersey story. I agree with you about Iraq. What do you mean my New Jersey story? Like, what are you talking about? What do you think I, like, actually fucking was on the rooftops in New Jersey dancing when 9/11 happened? That's a joke. You got roasted for no reason. I'm sorry. If I popped off on you for no reason, I apologize. No, I'm sorry. Maybe I misunderstood what he was saying. This is okay. I'm gonna control my emotions a little bit more. When we talk about the death of millions of Iraqi people, I do tend to get a little bit more aggressive, or, you know, the evisceration of the otherwise Muslim world at the hands of the American military state, at the behest of the military-industrial complex, so that we could do a $6, $7, $8 trillion war on terror that has opened up so many fucking rifts and has caused hundreds of millions of people almost at this point to be displaced, robbed from their homes, removed from their everyday existence, and has made it so much harder for Muslim people, refugees specifically, to live in the Western world. It's difficult for me to, you know, it's difficult for me to be reasonable and even-keeled when talking about this shit. So I apologize if I misunderstood that person and popped off on him. Let's continue. Michael Ignatieff's infamous New York Times Magazine cover story from January 2003. Ignatieff was founding director of Harvard's Carr Center for Human Rights. America's empire is not like empires of times past, built on colonies, conquests, and the white man's burden. We are no longer in the era of the United Fruit Company, when American corporations needed the Marines to secure their investments overseas. The 21st century imperium is a new invention in the annals of political science, an empire light, a global hegemony whose grace notes are free markets, human rights, and democracy enforced by the most awesome military power the world has ever known. It is the imperialism of people who remember that their country secured its independence by revolt against an empire. Yeah, that's what we did. We did the Boston Tea Party on, fucking Iraq. Is this another... is this another one of those like fucking weirdo Canadians? Yeah, it is, isn't it? This is another one of those freak fuck Canadian dipshits that come over the border from Snow, Mexico to the United States of America and basically take over every fucking liberal institution and try to do a more polite war crime, okay? There is nothing I despise more. Go back to your fucking country. You have health care. Stop trying to further undermine the American working class's existence. Go and fucking destroy Canada. You sacre bleu, hon, baguette eating, maple syrup sucking dipshit. I hate them so much. I don't know if he's actually Quebecois or not, but it doesn't matter. Sorry for the Quebecers that caught a fucking stray there. Nothing worse than living in another another fucking English state that still is subservient to the fucking Queen, and then coming to America and then doing more American shit. Jordan Peterson, Fucking Steven Crowder. What's that dickhead at the New York Times? There's another one. This fucking asshole, Michael Ignatieff. No, I'm not talking about fucking... Stop. I'm not talking about like XQC or Justin Bieber or fucking even Drake, okay? I'm talking about all these conservative-ass Canucks who come over here and try to LARP as a fucking LARP. Brett Stevens. Thank you. That's who I was thinking of. Fuck you, Brett Stevens. There should be an INS specifically for Canadian LARPers who come here and they're like, I love America, brother. We should do more wars, right? And it's like, fuck you. You are being deported. Gavin McGinnis, Tom McDonald, just ship him to Alberta. New Yorker editor David Remnick's Case for Invasion, 26th of January 2003. New York Times executive editor Bill Keller, The I Can't Believe I'm a Hawk Club, February 8th. We reluctant hawks may disagree amongst ourselves about the most compelling logic for war. Protecting America, relieving oppressed Iraqis, or reforming the Middle East. A civilizing force. Remember, we are the civilizing force against these brutes living in this brutal existence in Iraq. You know what I mean? We're there to civilize them. We're going to reform them. Leon Wieseltier, the literary editor of the New Republic, which, by the way, the New Republic is supposed to be a leftist platform, right? At that time, they were in their Tony Blair style era, I guess. But so can a liberal support this president in this war? I do not see why not. The United States, its needs and its duties is larger than any of its leaders. The war against Saddam Hussein is just, and it is truly a last resort. There was nothing else we could have done. Lawrence F. Kaplan, also from the New Republic. Elie Wiesel, Paul Berman, Joseph Nye et al., Liberals for War. And Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor and Nobel Peace Laureate, emerged from a meeting with President Bush last month and declared that while he is not a man of war, he supports it as a way to stop Saddam Hussein. Anne-Marie Slaughter, Dean of Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. Remember, these are liberal institutions. What's up? Thomas Friedman, three-time New York Times Pulitzer winner, New York Times columnist. D-Day is a very famous one. We already saw Thomas Friedman's takes. This is just a tiny selection from the U.S., not the UK. Feel free to post more as a tribute to the groupthink that created this huge disaster for Iraq, the region, and the world. These are just the liberals, by the way. These are just the liberals that were also like very public, very prominent, very like loud liberal voices that were also championing this war from liberal outlets and liberal institutions.